Hey everyone, welcome to the College Chaps podcast. The way I've written down here it says College Chaos podcast. One and one two.
Could be
As
a could
we
be a
as
could be a typo, could be an accurate reflection of
I
what you're
think
about to hear.
I think it's probably going to be a fairly accurate. Anyway, as we record this, we are but 143 days away from the start of the college football season. And the bright sparks amongst you will have worked out that we are now in April. So before we get back to spring football and really the beginning of talking season, we thought we'd mull over some of the April Fool's headlines and have our own mini talking nonsense season. But first, with the chaps, I'm joined by my fantastically talented compatriot from deepest, darkest Derbyshire, Oliver. How are you?
Deep, deepest, darkest Derbyshire. It's the nicest thing anyone's said about Derbyshire for a long time, I think. Yeah, doing really well. I was a bit disappointed with the lack of absolute crazy April Fool's headlines yesterday. I was also disappointed by what appears to be a complete lack of April Fool's etiquette these days because people don't tend to stick to the noon in your local time zone restriction of what is April Fool's worthy or not. Damn it, as a long held season ticket holder to April Fool's Day, that's the change I don't like to see. That's the epitome of people getting upset about the transfer portal and NIL in college football. That's how I feel about people not adhering to the midday rule where April Fool's is concerned.
Well, like many things in this life, the April Fool's etiquette has gone to, hell in a handbasket. So on that note, we've picked out a few, right? There were a few, right? There wasn't. What I found was that it was quite interesting to see people's sense of humor, right? Because what some people found hilarious didn't necessarily translate to other stuff. But we've picked out a few to talk about. The one that caught my eye easily was Arizona State. Putting out something on Twitter that they were going to turn their field to maroon. They weren't alone in that respect because I think Cal put one out, which is a very bright yellow golden color, which would have tested even the best eyesight, I think, with a football. But it was kind of cool. I mean, I think the mock-up of ASU Stadium with the maroon field was pretty cool, wasn't it?
Yeah, honestly, from an April Fool's perspective, all this did was make me feel sad that there's not more like colourful football turfs around college football. You think about like the great sporting arenas that we like get really excited about. Albertson Stadium, Boise State, the Smurf turf, the teal turf down at Coastal Carolina at Myrtle Beach, the the grey the grey turf at Eastern Michigan. There's a red turf at Eastern Washington. There's Central Arkansas has like a purple and grey thing, striped turf, which is just awesomely horrible. Um, but I think it's like those quirks. Those quirks are what set college football apart from the NFL, right? So when I was like,
Yeah.
but that Arizona State turf looked amazing. That maroon was like, because those colors, those Arizona State Sun Devils colors are awesome. So to have like a turf of that color, Cal's like you mentioned, Cal's golden yellow turf. I'm trying to think. I'm sure there was another one yesterday as well that I saw. I'm sure there was three that I picked out. But then, as you rightly mentioned, then George, not everyone found it funny because there was a well followed college football news aggregation Twitter page, whatever you want to call it, that did the reverse and then made the Smurf turf green as an April Fool's prank. The Boise State were ditching the Smurf turf for life, and Boise State's AD Jeremiah Dickey did not find that funny at all. He found that an affront to his football program, and rightly he should. Cold dead hands, body, cold dead body over my cold dead body, something along those lines from Jeremiah Dickey. Strong fighting words.
There's some things you just shouldn't mess with, right? And the Smurf turf at Boise is one of them. I guess you're right in saying that. I do think that when I saw that particular post, instantly I thought, because of the timing, it was likely to be an April Fool, but not out with the realms possibility. It did look somewhat attractive. I wasn't greatly taken with Cal's mock-up. It was just way too bright. You needed some sunglasses, but would I had maroon turf over the grey turf? Yes, absolutely. I'm not a big fan of the grey turf, to be perfectly honest. So it was one of those ones which wasn't absurdly out of the question, I didn't think.
I think the thing is as well. I guess for us, it's easy to sit at home watching it on telly and be able to pick out players willy nilly. But I guess if you've got Arizona State playing in their magnificent maroons on a maroon field with some sort of hideous number combination, like color combination on the back, if you're calling that game, I remember a couple of seasons ago, Eastern Michigan's like on the grey turf with the grey uniform, and I'm sure it was a grey uniform and some like bizarre colour for the numbers. Like you couldn't pick out a number, you couldn't pick out a name of a single player on that football field. And Cowls, like you get a bit of sunshine on that yellow turf. That's believing. That's like staring at a solar eclipse.
Could you imagine the glare that comes off of that?
Unbelievable.
The next one, quite quite certainly as a result of the hugely popular AFLAC commercial with Sanders and Coach Saban, which I find is hilarious, right? And I think that's the kind of bit that people realise how close they were as a kind of partnership, and they do bounce off each other quite a lot, and the adverts are hilarious. Um, but the story was run yesterday that Coach Saban was going to link up with Deion Sanders and become his number two. That one was an easy one to spot, but it's interesting in terms of the debate about whether Saban would be enticed back into the game, isn't it? Right? I mean, he seems to have settled in very well, maybe too well into life as a pundit and a TV personality. But you do wonder when you see, Belichick at North Carolina and others, Frank Reich going to Stanford, whether Saban could be tempted out of retirement. But that was a funny one in terms of the duo that they've become.
Yeah, I think it was like multiple. There was multiple strands that I thought it was great, and I thought almost believable as well. And I'll get into why I thought it was almost believable in a second. But yeah, um, that whole relationship that has come to life via the AFLAC commercials. It's not. It's probably one of the most unlikely like relationships that you could imagine when you consider the like those two head coaches' personalities as
Mhm.
head coaches. Deion Sanders is very swaggy character who has really masterminded the current era of college football with NIL and how you use social media to present your program, and against Nick Saban, who famously very annoyed when his players would celebrate after wins. Like they're two very different coaches, but have come together to form this unlikely on-screen relationship with the AFLAC commercials, which work incredibly well. And then obviously there is an element of mutual coaching respect there as well, which I think is great to see. I With Nick Saban, you always feel like you never felt like you could see his retirement coming because you always felt like he would be a coach. Like you never felt that day would come where he wouldn't be, even in this changing climate of college football. Um, and you can almost feel like he's a sort of character that would never be able to completely extricate himself from the game. So, for a rumor of this like magnitude, doesn't seem that far stretch, right? Like this is a guy
Mm.
who loves football, who a lot of people were shocked retired. That you could see making his way back to the game. I think the where it kind of falls from a fit perspective is like Nick Saban's no one's number two, right? I think this is the thing. Like Nick Saban's no one number two. You have a hard time imagining him playing second fiddle to anyone, um, which Which yeah, but the thing that intrigued me was obviously we were talking about this before we started recording was the coaching staff that Colorado is putting together now. Like it's not out of the realm of the possibility that you would hear a name like Nick Saban being bandied around to join that coaching staff because it seems like Deion Sanders is cherry picking every big name coach to join that coaching staff, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's intriguing, right? And I think we've seen this a little bit over the last couple of seasons, a lot more last season, where some really highly respected NFL coaches are kind of coming back into the NFL. Now, some of them were well, look, I'll correct myself before I start. They've all worked in college before, but most of them have made their kind of name in the NFL. So, we talked about Freddie Kitchens becoming offensive coordinator at North Carolina, and there are others who are coming into the game. Frank Reich is now the interim head coach at Stanford. So it's intriguing to see. Um, with the development of the college game, and we've talked about this a lot, where the college game is moving more towards the NFL model. And when you get into that with schemes and the way in which, players kind of interact with coaches, it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. Was interesting for me at the weekend. Tim Tebow had his kind of annual charity event. And on the Saturday, I had the golf tournament. There was a lot, as you would expect, there was a lot of big name sporting personalities there. One of whom was Urban Meyer, who was Tebow's head coach at Florida when they won the national championship. And Meyer was asked about Deion Sanders as a head coach, and a really interesting anecdote that Urban Meyer does, like I guess many ex-head coaches, go around different schools, different NFL franchises, just to listen in and observe and what's happening. And he said within a very short space of time at Colorado, he was very much of the opinion that Deion Sanders was going to be an excellent coach. And he said it was because of the way that he interacted with the players. It was his coaching. And he knew from a pretty early viewpoint that Sanders was going to be a really good coach. Now, I think it's really interesting now that this is his third season at Colorado, and we got that right. We're not entering into four yet. So, he's been there. He's just signed a new contract, which is worth a lot of money. Colorado clearly want to keep hold of him. It is not the 5 minute wonder that everybody thought it was going to be. And I think I include myself in here. He's going to be, he'd almost got his foot in the door, and he was getting linked with the Florida State job or, another job somewhere else. But it's not the flash in the pan that I think many people thought or hoped it might be. And Deion Sanders could really make a splash with Colorado, given where they now play their football.
Yeah, I mean you would hope so for 50, what was it, 54
$54
million,
million,
$54
yeah.
million dollars. You would think you'd make a relatively significant splash. But you saw the turnaround last year, 1 year turnaround. Like wherever Deion Sanders goes, and just going back to his time at Jackson State, obviously there was some familiar um, family element to the recruiting that he was able to do for Jackson State with Shadur, with Shiloh. But he enticed a guy like Travis Hunter to Jackson State. He brought a guy like Travis Hunter to Colorado with him. He was able to and has been able to. Whatever you think of how Deion Sanders approaches the transfer portal in this transfer portal era, he's able to bring players in. He's able to bring in the players that he wants, and that paid off pretty handsomely. And now he's showing his chops in recruiting, that recruiting ability that brought Travis Hunter to Jackson State, brought Juju Lewis to Colorado when he could have gone to any program. He could have been at USC with renowned quarterback whisperer Lincoln Riley, and he's going to be potentially playing football in Colorado as a true freshman this season. And like you say, great arena for them with the Big 12 now, an ever expanding Big 12 footprint. um, moving forward, and a team that will rightly or wrongly be very early favourites to win that conference this year, and that puts them bang in line for a spot in the college football playoff moving forward. And what bigger showcase is there for a guy like Deion Sanders than the college football playoff?
That's exactly what I was going to say because that's where your recruiting message comes from. We will put you in the window. We will get you nationwide exposure, and you can play in the Big 12. So, yeah, it's going to be another great year for the Colorado Buffaloes in terms of the involvement and the evolution of that team. The next April Fools I want to talk about is careful what you wish for, right? Because I think sometimes there's two good examples of this where you get people's expectations up, right? And I touched on this at the start about individual sense of humours. This is not where I'm going with this, but Tiger Woods had tweeted out that after a sort of intensive um, uh, treatment and all the shenanigans that go with a busted ACL, he was going to be fit enough to make the Masters. Now, I'm sure Tiger Woods thought that was hilarious because he is nowhere near fit enough to make it to the Masters. But a lot of people didn't. A lot of people were really quite disappointed by it. And why I mentioned that was the Georgia equipment team tweeted out that black jerseys were back. And I don't know how familiar you are with this, Ollie, but the black jerseys are a real topic of conversation at Georgia because they very rarely get rolled out. It really is a kind of once in a blue moon type situation. So it got a lot of people super excited. On the other hand, I was less than, and I know you're a big uniform guy, right? So I know you like to look at all the different uniforms. I was less than impressed by the Oregon neon pink uniform that was doing the circulation, which I dearly hope was in fact an April Fool's because you'd have to wear sunglasses to watch that awful piece of kit, to be perfectly honest.
Imagine if Cal was still in the Pac-12 and a Cal versus Oregon game on a April Fool's collaboration between the bright yellow field and the bright pink
Oh man, no.
Oregon Ducks unis. That'd be incredible. I thought the Oregon uniforms were they're amazing.
I
They
bet
had
you
a
did.
they had a uniform this year with a touch of pink in it, if I remember rightly. Just some accents and highlights, and they always do such a great job, Oregon. And honestly, that's if we talk about all these April Fools that we looked at on Tuesday morning, and as they came through throughout the day, as the clock shifted around to the April Fool's witching hour. That's probably the most believable one. Anything to do with Oregon and uniforms, and I think that's
Uh,
probably why they did it. That's probably why they did it because they were like, "Oh, I tell you what, we can get people really suckered in with this. Is like these are our new uniforms, part of our 50 uniform rotation for the one season." Um, it wouldn't surprise me if they'd have come out with something about changing uniforms at half time because they've got so many different rotations at this point that they could have a uniform every quarter. Let's be
I
honest.
don't know how the equipment managers keep up with it all, to be honest, because they do push the envelope. I was just trying to think about what would be the worst possible clash for that pink uniform. Like, which team would be? I mean, as you know, I am not a fan of the Maryland Terrapins uniforms. I just don't know where on earth that abomination comes from. But I can't. Yeah, there's. I mean, I guess the thing is the neon green would be a truly horrible clash. So I mean, maybe the Oregon spring game should not be neon pink versus neon green. Greens versus pinks. I don't think would be a
Well,
good
no
way.
one, no one would be able to watch it anyway, would they? Like, there's no spring games actually going on anymore, so we won't have to worry about it. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Maybe like the orange, like an orange, like Oregon State sometimes have
Oregon State,
like an orange color rush. That against that pink would be quite something vile to behold.
or Oklahoma
Uh,
State. I mean, they've got
Oklahoma
they've
State,
got quite a neon. It's quite a bright orange, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
it is, yeah. They could
God.
have an exhibition game between the Oklahoma State Cowboys in their most violent orange versus the Oregon Ducks in their most violent pink, and play it on the grey turf at Eastern Michigan, or play it on the purple and white, purple and grey, whatever color it is at Central Arkansas. What a
It's a fun.
great treat for the eyes that would be.
The,
That would be a,
um,
that would be a day you'd wish to be colourblind.
well, that's where I was going to go. It's an excellent segue because I was listening to Marty McGee on Saturday, and Tim Tebow was on. He was talking about the gender reveal for him and Demi are having a baby, and they're on a gender reveal, and Tebow said, "Well, but they all forgot that I'm colorblind." So when they did the gender reveal, he said all I could see was this kind of browny grey, and he's like, "What is that?" It was hilarious the way he said it. Um, we're missing Alex in many ways. We always miss Alex, but we're really missing him for this next part because. Well, actually, maybe not, because we've got, what, 10 minutes left in the podcast. And if we're going to start talking about volleyball, we'd be here for the next 40. Harper Murray is a volleyball superstar at Nebraska. Now, we have touched on this a little bit. Volleyball at Nebraska is massive because they filled the stadium. They played they filled the Lincoln Memorial Stadium for a volleyball game. But Harper Murray's a bit of a TikTok star, and she's managed to coerce the head coaches into appearing on TikTok. And this week, she managed to get Matt Rhule on. Uh, and this was the best headline that I saw this week, where Nebraska athletics managed to convince people that Harper and Matt Rhule were had signed up for the US equivalent of Strictly, which frankly, I would love to see head coach. Didn't Reggie Bush do um, Dancing with the Stars? But
I
you're
don't
shaking your head.
know, George.
You must watch
I
this stuff. Do you
don't,
not?
don't know, George. I have no idea. What I will say is, if anyone believed that Matt Rule was going to go on Dancing with the Stars, well, I presume you have to be able to actually dance in this TV program. I imagine you have to have some sort of level of competence. If anyone believed that Matt Rule was going to go on Dancing with the Stars after watching that TikTok video of him dancing, then you deserve to be fooled, to be shamed, because that, that wasn't it. No, Matt Rule hasn't got to worry about his star dancing skills being poached by someone else following spring dancing practice. Let's put it like that.
It was all diversionary tactics to get away from the football team. Don't watch the football team, watch me
Yeah,
dancing. But I've said this many, many times. I don't watch Strictly. I'll just say that now. But where there's
so
all these kind of conspiracy theories and controversies where someone who's actually a dancer makes it to the final. The whole point of it is that it should be a bunch of amateurs who, over the weeks, improve. We've talked about him already, but someone who doesn't shy away from the fact that he knows he's two-step from his cha-cha is Nick Saban. So maybe Nick Saban will make it onto Dancing with the
perhaps
Stars. That'd
the
be interesting.
sporting crossover no one knew they needed.
Well, we weren't sure where we were going to go with this episode, and we've gone down a very dark path, frankly. The
Nick,
least
if we ever thought we were getting Nick Saban on this podcast before this episode, I honestly not not sure those chances
Oh,
exist anymore.
I tell you, like now raise the point that we're gonna ask him about Dancing with the Stars. I'm sure that'll be the point that we do
Will
get.
he come on Britain's premier Dancing with the Stars podcast?
Well,
Maybe.
we don't know anything about college football, so we might as well pretend we do something else.
Very
The
true.
the least believable headline, frankly, with very, very poor humor, was the fact that South Bend, Indiana, was producing golden tulips on the campus at Notre Dame, which was just a ridiculous April Fool to put out there. Golden domes everywhere, and the tulips had appeared with with the flowered golden, which was just a
It's such a
complete
shame.
nonsense.
It's such a shame that we had one season where we really liked Notre Dame football on this podcast. Marcus Freeman made that program cool and likable. And on 1 April Tuesday, the Notre Dame social media team made it so that we will never root for him again.
Exactly. Back to square one. What were they thinking? They built up all this goodwill momentum and then they throw it out the window with golden tulips. What nonsense. I mean, look at Nebraska. I've got Matt Rhule on TikTok and, boring old Notre Dame have got golden tulips. I mean,
Marcus Freeman strikes me as a guy who'd be pretty swift on the dance floor, to be honest.
that's going to be the next episode. Next episode is which head coaches could make it onto Dancing with the Stars. We've already got about half a dozen, I would have thought.
I think you've already got the merchandise in the back of your brain for this Dancing with the Stars podcast.
Sam Pittman, I tell you what, Sam Pittman, I bet he knows. I bet he knows a foxtrot when it comes on. He's got a jukebox at home, right? So
Perhaps
I tell you, Sam's a smooth operator. I tell you that.
If Greg Sankey's listening to this, he's on his morning run.
He's switching it off. I think.
Yeah.
What is this rubbish? Anyway, onto our favourite topic outside of college football is food.
Yes.
And this is not an April Fool's jape. Although it caught me out a little bit, although you corrected me in so far as you said it had been reported the day before, so clearly out with the April Fool's etiquette anyway. But I thought this is a genius way to get people into the stands at football games. Coastal Carolina giving away free food to their home games, and I think it's certainly to ticket holders as you would expect, but I think it might be aimed at season ticket holders to drive maybe some increased ticket sales. But who wouldn't want a free hot dog when you go to a game, Ollie?
I have a free hot dog whether I was going to a game, whether it was handed to me on the street, given to me out of a dustbin. To be honest, but yeah, it's great. It's great. It's Coastal Carolina, obviously capturing the imagination of a nation and a global audience. I think during the COVID season, where they were such an enigmatic program under Jamie Chadwell and Grayson McCall was a quarterback there. A whole ton of talented players, the teal turf, great offensive scheme while Chadwell was there, and they had a difficult season last season, and it's not been the same program in terms of the level of entertainment there over the last 2 years, and presumably that's had a detrimental impact on the number of season tickets being sold. And what better way to try and get people to come back through the door, stay through the door, than offering free food? So four free. That's easy for me to say. 4 free items from the concession stand. Multiple trips allowed. I think this is where it started to sound like an April Fool's jape, because it was like, oh, you get 4 free items. So a hot dog, a Coke, popcorn, and another, I can't remember what else was option, nachos maybe. And you can go back again and again and again. And that made it sound like it was probably an April Fool's gag, but you have to scan an app. Presumably there's something that helps the program keep track on there, maybe marketing. That's what people use apps and email addresses and stuff for nowadays. It's direct marketing. It's a way to get people's information. But if it gets season ticket free holders through the door, if it gets people back in the stands at Myrtle Beach, if it gets people excited and interested in Coastal Carolina football, I think that's a great thing. And in this era where it seems to be, I don't come across as a miserable old man, because I'm not, and I agree with a lot of what happens in college football right now, and particularly around player power. But at a time where schools are turning to the pockets of fans to help pay their way through this new era of college football, rather than asking for donations towards NIL collectives and whatnot. It seems it's a very different approach to college football and to people, to fans, and I think that's certainly something to be celebrated.
I think you're right. I think you hit on a really good point there that I think the goodwill. So you got this community spirit in schools just now where, and for decades, frankly, where everybody's in it to get the school. Everyone's proud of their alma mater, and the team that they support, the team that the town they live in. But I think goodwill has the potential to erode depending on how things, not just, I don't just mean winning and losing, but investing in a player who then disappears after a year, jumps into transfer portal, right? So I think it's ingenious to come up with different ways of supporting the team without necessarily, you still have to do it financially, but without necessarily, putting your hand in the pocket for a donation. And this seemed like a great idea. I don't want to be overly controversial, but I still yet to go to a football game, whether that's NFL or college, and have some actual decent food. I'm still slightly disappointed by the offerings you get. I mean, I'm thinking of my trips to college football games, and
I've seen the meals you've been eating in these American press boxes at college football
well,
games,
the
George.
press box is different,
You
right?
can't.
But you
Well,
can't
I guess the whole point here is like the tailgate scene is where the food scene is at.
exactly,
Like
exactly.
if you wanna eat well at a college football game, you're not eating in the stadium, you're eating in the car park.
I think
Like
that's
you're eating in the
exactly it.
parking lot.
So you go to Coastal Carolina and you pay for your season ticket, and you're probably going to get your $1 hot dogs. But a hot dog's a hot dog, right? I mean,
Hey, as our good friend John Tier just told us, but many times,
the food
don't
of the
need
American
to
people. Yes.
exactly. You don't need to do anything special. You don't need to sex up a hot dog. A hot dog is a hot dog.
Talk about finishing the podcast on a high. That's how to do it. It's been a roller coaster. We've had some lows, but we finished on a high. Thank you, Ollie. That's all from us on this episode. We hope you've enjoyed listening to our Talking Nonsense season. Thanks for listening. Thanks for continuing to support us. We really mean that. Stay safe and well, and catch you all next time.